Last year, the Obama administration put into effect new regulations on methane leaks, both in terms of detecting them and stopping them once they're detected. And that was extremely important for a couple of reasons. I mean, first of all, if you're concerned about global climate change, depends on who you talk to, but most people seem to agree that methane is about 30 times more damaging than CO2 to our atmosphere in terms of global warming. And so that is absolutely devastating. It's also really bad on the health of the people living in the areas near these leaks, particularly children. And so theoretically, detecting and stopping these leaks is good for the people in those areas, also good for the planet as a whole. And so a lot of credit to Obama for putting into effect those regulations. Unfortunately, those regulations have now been put on hold, with the Trump administration saying that they're going to block them for at least 2 years. And God help us if we forget about this and then they just make it permanent after those 2 years. Under the proposed 2-year delay, companies would of course not need to comply with the new requirements, forcing them to put into place systems to detect the leaks and then actually doing something about it. They don't have to worry about that. And of course, supporters of the rule have argued that it would promote the health benefits that I talked about earlier. Also, it would save a lot of money for the government, and it would take 180,000 tons of methane out of the atmosphere each year, which, by the way, considering this is a gas, that's a lot, 180,000 tons. Now, the EPA put out a message about why we shouldn't necessarily be too worried about this being blocked for 2 years. Let's see if we buy their argument. The EPA believes that the environmental health or safety risk addressed by this action may have a disproportionate effect on children. However, because this action merely proposes to delay the 2016 rule, this action will not change any impacts of the 2016 rule after the stay. Any impacts on children's health caused by the delay in the rule will be limited because of the length of the proposal stay is limited. So all they're saying is, obviously this is bad for children, but hey, it's just 2 years. How much damage could it do to them over the course of 2 years?
Play inside.
Let's find out.
Play inside.
Exactly. Air couldn't get inside, clearly. Their defense is that it's just 2 years. I mean, what sort of environmental contaminant would we allow? Let your kids play in that dirty water for 2 years.
Trump is such a fraud. The Trump administration was such a fraud, and it worked so effectively on, not all 62 million people. Many of those people actually support rules like this, but a lot don't, right? A lot think, oh, I like that the EPA, I like, our water got clean and the air got clean. That was good, right? So what do you think is gonna happen in 2 years? That's assuming that Trump is in office and not at a correctional facility in Marion, right? But presuming that Donald Trump is still in office, what do you think happens in 2 years? They go, all right, those Obama regulations, they start now.
Yeah.
I mean, you're kidding. They'll just be
delay it more.
They'll be delayed, and other ones may be rolled back to levels that we didn't. I don't even know what the methane rules we've had prior to this, but they will roll back everything. There will be no, short of Lake Erie being on fire, they won't do anything. They were never gonna do anything. I think that was patently obvious to anyone who paid attention to this guy's career. Just merely saying, the people
he's packed the EPA with?
Right, right. The people he was gonna nominate, we knew he was gonna nominate guys like Scott Pruitt. This is exactly, and Betsy DeVos. Those are exactly the people, and Rick Perry, he was gonna put in office. And it should trouble some percentage of that 62 million who think, we're like, yeah, this is, I didn't want to drain, I thought you might drain the swamp so you would clean the swamp. I didn't think you would drain the swamp and then fill it in with a more toxic swamp.
Yeah.
But that is what he's going to do.
He does want to drain the swamp, but let the kids play in the swamp for 2 years, and then we'll come back to the issue then.
That's better.
Yeah, and look, I think a lot of people, like methane, it's not, crude oil. It's hard to see, it's hard to know when there's a leak, and so perhaps people get it's less obvious, and so people don't know about how severe it is. But here in LA last year, I believe it was, we had many methane leaks. If you look at a heat map, it's horrifying, not just in the LA, but across the country. It's far more common than you think, but we had a massive one north of LA that went on for months.
That was the Porter Ranch leak?
Yes, exactly. And we have no idea how much damage that was able to do to the atmosphere in that period of time. The idea that corporations shouldn't have to forego a small amount of their profits to stop that is extremely short-sighted. So look, there's two more elements of this I want to cover. One is how significant these regulations would have been. There was a study back in 2013. The Colorado Department of Public Health and Environment estimated that the new requirements that were being discussed then would reduce emissions of both hydrocarbons and other volatile organic compounds from oil and gas production by about 1/3, or 92,000 tons a year, which for context is more than the total VOC spewed by all of the state's cars. That is extremely significant. And all it requires is that we crack down slightly on the companies that are allowing these leaks to continue. But of course, they make money off of it. And the EPA estimated that the cost savings for just delaying, not eliminating permanently, that these companies are going to save at least $173 million. And so maybe your kids have to play in methane-infested air for a couple of years. That doesn't affect them. They don't live next to the leaks.
Some of these regulations are for the greater good. Many of them are for the greater good. This notion that we can allow capitalism to run about unfettered is a dangerous, foolish argument. We have always fettered it. It needs fettering, right? We're not advocating that the state take control of all these businesses.
Yeah,
we're advocating that there be, and I got it. They're a burden. And there's paperwork involved, and they reduce your profits in some ways. But if the atmosphere is completely tainted and your company is out of business in 18 years or 28 years, well, then you should have done this.
Exactly. Yeah, and we don't expect the companies to actually show that sort of forethought. We know they're not going to look decades ahead if theoretically they can make more money now.
It's government's job.
Why yes, exactly. We expect that we can. That amongst all the other problems that politicians bring with them, that they would have at least a little bit of wisdom, that they would be separated enough from the concerns, the profit motive, that they could care about their children, about the children of this country. But obviously we can't expect that. Now, and that's why it was so amazing when Obama was actually put these into effect. And this was just supposed to be the beginning. This was supposed to be the first step. And we allow Trump to get elected. And not only do we not grow, not move forward on that step, but we even knock that out from under us. There was actual progress.
Yeah, there was progress, and we got in the way of it carelessly in this country. And that burden rests with a lot of people, right? Of who's responsible for that. But we allowed that to happen, and we know what the response to this story will be, right? From the right. Well, first of all, they won't cover it probably, but if they did, the response will be cows, right? Cows. When they pass gas, it's methane.
That's true.
And everybody in Iowa is fine. And that legit, I mean, I'm barely paraphrasing what Steve Doocy would say.
Yeah.
Right, and he'll laugh because it's funny.
He would laugh, yeah.
Right? That will be their argument. That is always there. If you talk about methane, that's what you can guarantee that I'm not this specifically, but that the guys on the morning and Fox and Sean Hannity, I literally don't know who's on Fox anymore.
Sean Hannity still is.
Sean Hannity still is, but I don't know anybody else. Like Steve Doocy and Sean Hannity.
He's there,
that's it. But that's what they'll talk about. That'll be their thoughtful response. Because again, they've convinced millions and millions of Americans that somehow it is in the interest of the science lobby to overregulate.
That somehow they make money off of that.
That somehow that fits their interest, and they can continue to crank in those research dollars that just overwhelm them. And to paraphrase Jimmy's joke, to allow all those scientists to drive away in their brand new 2013 Tercels.
I thought he said Geometros.
No, it's Tercel.
It's Tercel? Okay, that's probably better. They actually still make the Tercel.
It's about teachers, but it applies to scientists.
It's just as good now.
Young Turks membership creates independent media.
Believe me.
No ads.
Believe me.
All the shows.
Believe me.
On demand.
Believe me.
Support independent media.
Believe me.
It's awesome, tremendous. You'll love it.
Believe me.
And by the end, you'll be thinking,
I'm like a smart person.
tytnetwork.com/join.